Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Race for the Prize. You can follow me on Twitter. Please go to racefortheprize.com. If you would like to get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, you can pay for the month. You can pay for a given weekend, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Today, we're going to talk about truck restarts for the third time. I would like to say it's the finale, but it's not. This is something we are going to discuss every week because it plays a significant role. Now, what I'm talking about today is I decided to make changes. You remember the first time that we talked about this, I just went through drivers in the top 10 because it's hard to compare restarts. It's from the top 10 to 20 to 30 or to 10 to 20. If you have good equipment and a good driver, you're going to gain a lot of spots in the teens or in the 20s. Whereas if you are restarting in the top 10 against really stiff competition, it's harder to make gains. So you can't really compare that data. And then it's kind of subjective and there's a lot of context involved. And ultimately what I decided was let's just quantify all of them and let's use a formula so we can get more data. It may not be the best route, but this way I can compile more races and get a subtle idea. And so what we're going to do, instead of being subjective with it, we'll be objective and understand that it's an imperfect tool. And what we'll say is if a driver gains more than 3 spots on a restart, regardless of where they are, we're going to give them a top grade of a 5-star. If they gain spots on a restart, just gaining, but not a big gain, we'll give them a 4. If they're neutral, they don't lose any spots, we'll give them a 3. Then if you lose a couple spots, 2. And if you lose more than a couple spots, 1. Again, imperfect tool, but we can get a more objective approach, a more consistent approach. Obviously, we know top 10, top 20, top 30, it's different, but it's the best that we're going to do. You're going to have to use your own analysis, but we can collect all the restarts and we can look at all of them in the end and get an idea of drivers that tend to gain spots, drivers that tend to lose spots, and we can get an idea of how finishing position correlates with that. We're going to have to kind of step back and decide not to overanalyze some of this because you will need context. For example, Christian Eckes was basically being perfect on restarts, still doesn't get a great finish. We would need to know the context of the race. Same thing with Carson Hocevar. Before we jump to conclusions, 6 out of 7 on restarts, being positive or better, but yet not really winning the race, we would want to look at the context of how the race played out, when the cautions happened, was there a long green flag run, etc. But one thing that we can at least walk away with is the understanding that Eckes and Hocevar are good on restarts. Kyle Busch obviously is good on restarts. That's one thing you can probably assume without going into the context. We can look at Texas as well. Again, we'll save the analysis of Texas for another day and not jump to too many conclusions with the data. But with this data, you can get an idea of who was good on restarts, who was not good on restarts, and maybe an idea of how it correlates. And one of the reasons why we want to be careful is you'll see that Nick Sanchez is perfect. Oh, but he never really gains any spots, but that's because he was always starting basically number 1. And he led basically all of this race. And so he's only showing up as 3s, but to defend the pole position over and over and over and over and over. So again, you need more context to really evaluate what's going on. But at the very least, we can see who is neutral or good on restarts. And we can compile that for all the intermediate track races and get a general idea. So we'll skip to that and look at what we have overall. Again, it's an imperfect tool, but it is a tool. It is a stat you can use. If you use the spreadsheet and see over the season, Las Vegas, Texas, Kansas, Homestead, we look at those intermediate tracks and you'll see that Hocevar top of our list. And that really shouldn't be a surprise. And that can be a statistic that you use to boost him up because the guys that are restarting better than others are obviously going to finish better than others. And aside from that, they're also more likely, or at the very least, have a better opportunity at leading laps and running fast laps. So if we're trying to decide what hog or dominator you want to pick, you could use this statistic, say, well, Eckes has been good on restarts for the most part. He's a guy that I'm going to lean more into, It's just another statistic outside of practice labs, current form, and track history to help you make some better picks. Maybe Rajah Caruth in the value range, mid-tier. Matt DiBenedetto, a guy that we have highly suspected of being good at restarts in the Cup Series in the old package that stunk. Seems like this similar package in the Truck Series would suit him, and the data supports that as well. Jake Garcia, maybe a guy that you want to go with. And I might tell you some of the guys that you might want to fade or stay away from because they're not consistently gaining positions. Ty Majeski, overall, not really that good on restarts last year. Maybe that hurt his value a little bit. Maybe you would be less likely to play him. Chase Purdy in pretty good equipment last year. Maybe you would be more hesitant to roster him knowing that, all right, well, if I need him to lead laps or finish inside the top 5, his restarts are really going to hurt him. Maybe I'm going to want to go with another driver. So it's something you want to look at. You obviously want to look at the context of the race in general, but it's another measure. Eventually, I will probably expand this to the other ovals. Could be a little bit more discriminate about which ones that I will select, but another step towards analyzing restart data, which I think is going to be a valuable tool in helping you build better truck lineups. And it should be at the forefront of our conversations. It should be right there with practice laps. It should be right there with current form and a significant part of the process. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have this data. They aren't willing to aggregate this data. And I know it's not the best, most accurate tool. The most accurate tool is never going to exist, but it's something to take a step closer and to try to figure out the puzzle and mystery that is fantasy NASCAR. That's all I got for you in this one. Quick, short, sweet. Really just another infomercial of, hey, check out the fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. Check out this data as it evolves in 2024. And let's see what we can do and figure out and see if we can get an advantage on the field. Have a good day.